What if Ahsoka brought Anakin back to the light on Malacore, Part 3? Though Palpatine had rallied the Empire, they were still in shock and the Imperial Navy was disheartened and on the back foot. Because of this, the Alliance to restore the Republic were able to score many victories in middle fighting. With a new goal in mind to kill Palpatine, Anakin and Ahsoka took a step back from the active fighting and decided to go and seek advice from Yoda on Dagobah. They only did this with the assurance from the rebellion that they would be fine without them and would call if they needed them. They took the shuttle the Organas had given them and traveled to the swamp planet in search of the former Grand Master. As soon as they arrived over the planet, they let the Force guide them and they found themselves drawn to a certain area that was strong in the Force. After finding a firm enough ground to land the shuttle, they disembarked and trucked through the swamp. After a little while, they came across a small shack and they both knew without a doubt who was inside, his presence in the Force all too strong and familiar. Before they could approach it, though, the door opens and out walks former Grand Master Yoda. He stops just beside the door and begs for them to come to him. As they go to him, they notice that he has obviously grown older and that his body is starting to deteriorate. Ahsoka greets him first, and he nods, saying that it was good to see that she had survived and was alright. Anakin, still unsure and feeling remorse for his part in the destruction of the Jedi, took a moment longer before greeting him. Yoda smiles up at him, telling him that they had all made mistakes and had regrets. He was already forgiven. He was thankful that he had proven him wrong by coming back to the light, as now he could finally bring balance to the Force as Qui-Gon had envisioned. He continues, saying that he knew that they were here for his guidance, but he was afraid that he had little to offer. He had nothing more he could teach them, and no insight on the situation, as it was something the Jedi had never experienced. He could, however, direct them to a cave of the Force Nexus that was on the planet. However, it was a place that was powerful in the dark side. It would allow them to face their fears and possibly give them a vision of the future. Anakin and Ahsoka hesitantly agreed, not wanting the trip to be a waste, and after a night's rest, Yoda leads them to the cave that was masking his light side Force signature. He tells them to enter one at a time and he urges them to leave the lightsabers behind, that they would be useless inside a Force vision or could even interfere with it. Anakin volunteers to go first, and he hands Ahsoka his lightsaber. She's apprehensive about it as the dark side was strong and Anakin had only recently come back from it. Anakin reassures her with a carefree smile, and she just prays that his confidence is well founded. Anakin doesn't waste another moment and enters the cave, his cockiness fighting back his anxiety. It appeared to be a normal cave at first, though the deeper he went in, the darker it got. He kept on walking as if it was in a trance, but it was startled out of it as he noticed he was surrounded by red fog that appeared to have things moving through it. He instinctively reached for the lightsaber, and grew panicked when he remembered that he had left it with Ahsoka, though the thought of her made him come back to his senses and ground himself. He reached out with the Force into the fog but felt nothing, so he instead made his way to where one of the figures had stopped. As soon as he reached it, the fog vanished, revealing a figure that made him freeze. It took a moment for him to come back to reality, as the figure before him was Vader, or at least wearing his suit. It was like all those times they had seen his reflection in mirrors and glass. He came to the conclusion that this was a vision of the past, of when he had fought former Jedi, maybe in his fight with Ahsoka. He raised his fists, ready to fight, but his lightsaber suddenly appeared in his hand. Though confused, he was grateful and ignited it. Vader did the same and their duel started. Anakin didn't know how long the fight lasted, but it was a tough one. However, he eventually cut Vader down, and, raising his lightsaber, he quickly cut off a portion of Vader's mask like Ahsoka had done with him. However, the face underneath wasn't his and he stumbled back. The face was that of a woman, one that he had seen on Alderaan while he was recovering, a face that resembled Padme. He somehow knew without doubt that she was his daughter, that he had just killed his daughter. He didn't get another moment as another figure approached him and he only just got his lightsaber up in time to block theirs. It was another person wearing Vader's suit. He defeated this one faster than Leia, but instead of delivering the killing blow, he instead knocked him down and cut off a portion of the mask. This face he had never seen before, though it resembled him when he was younger, and again he somehow knew without doubt that it was his son, Luke. Anakin jerked his head up as cackling echoed across the room and he saw, up on a raised dais, Darth Sidious looking down at him wearing a wicked smile. Then the all too familiar pain of lightning hitting his body as Sidious shot lightning at him. His vision soon faded, but Padme's face appeared soon afterwards, asking why he had killed their children, why he had done Sidious's bidding, why he had given up at the time he could have changed everything. Her face suddenly contorted in pain as red lightsaber went through her from behind, Anakin tried to go to her, but found that he couldn't move and could only watch helplessly as she fell to the ground, dead. Behind her stood Vader, and this time he knew it was him, as the helmet had the same slash Ahsoka had inflicted. He only realized he was moving after he had already ignited his lightsaber and was charging his past self. No, his dark self. Vader easily blocked him and their duel got heated, though after a while, neither could get the advantage over the other. Anakin's anger and fear kept on rising as questions swirled in his mind. Why was he responsible for his children's death? Was he responsible for Padme's as well? Why couldn't he overcome his dark self? Would he really become Vader again? As he relentlessly attacked Vader, he used his anger expecting to help him like it always had, but instead it only seemed to fuel Vader. Would he come out of this fallen again and kill Ahsoka? That sudden question that popped into his head made him falter, and he only just managed to jump away before Vader could strike him. Ahsoka. Even after seeing the worst in him, she didn't want to kill him and even forgave him. So why was he trying to kill himself? Anakin fought within himself, but eventually he was able to let his anger dissipate and stood as calmly as he could as Vader approached. When Vader raised his lightsaber to strike, Anakin swiftly blocked him, then proceeded to grab his wrist, twisting the lightsaber from his hand. He threw both their lightsabers away, then, against his best instinct, he brought Vader into an embrace. He could feel as Vader started to collapse to the ground, Anakin went with him. Before he knew it, the form of Vader vanished and a voice spoke, one which he hadn't heard since he was a kid. He looked up to see Qui-Gon Jinn standing over him. He praised him for all they had accomplished, though lamented that the destruction of the Jedi Order was a catastrophe. However, it had grown corrupt and complacent, and it was a chance for a new, better order to rise in its place. He continued, saying that what he saw with his children would come true if he didn't succeed in killing Darth Sidious, but he was much closer as he was able to start forgiving himself and finally accept his darker self and all the emotions that it brought. He told him that he was proud of him, and he was always there if he ever truly needed him, but as of now, the time was running out. As he wished Anakin farewell, his form dissolved and Anakin startled awake. He was laying on cold stone with darkness surrounding him, and it took a moment for him to remember that he was in the cave on Dagobah. He got to his feet, and though he was sore all over, he made his way out of the cave. He couldn't tell the time on this planet, but Ahsoka and Yoda were still outside, waiting in silence. Upon seeing Anakin, Ahsoka jumped to her feet and rushed to him. She stopped short, but Anakin closed the distance and wrapped her in a tight hug. He whispered to her, thanking her. This only confused Ahsoka, but before she could ask, Yoda interrupted them, telling Ahsoka to go into the cave. She tried to read Anakin, but could only tell that he was emotionally wrecked. Sighing, she handed Anakin back his lightsaber, as well as hers, before starting her way into the cave. She cast one final look back at Anakin, at the emotional mess he was barely managing to keep in. It scared her, seeing him like this, and she worried what awaited her in the cave, fearing that she wouldn't be strong enough to overcome it. She resolved herself, though, quickly turning and making haste into the cave, not wanting to give herself a chance to cause her doubt to prevent her from doing this. As she entered, she could see light shining from the other side. The cave couldn't be this small. Continuing, she left the cave into a sunny clearing full of lush green grass. In the center of it stood Padme and Anakin with what had to be their children, Luke and Leia. Around the clearing stood Plo Koon with Wolf, Rex, and Cody, then Obi-Wan and Satine. Kanan stood with Deba Balaba and Master Windu, while Shaak Ti stood with Yoda, Aayla Secura, and Kit Fisto, while the group of younglings she had taken on the gathering were training with Battlemaster Syndraulic. How were they all here? She had just left Anakin and Yoda, and the rest of them were most likely killed during Order 66, besides the twins who were in hiding in Rex, Wolf, and Obi-Wan. Before she could think any further, Anakin called her over. She hesitantly went to him, at which point he introduced the twins to her while Padme laughed at their antics. Rex seemed to see her next and greeted her, calling her Commander. Even though she couldn't see it, she knew that Plo Koon was smiling as he greeted her as well, referring to her as little Ahsoka. Everyone else slowly greeted her and included her in their conversations. This felt right, like she was at home, and everything was perfect. Although, however much she hated to admit it, she knew this wasn't real. She had felt Plo Koon die, and knew that most of the rest were killed as well. Ahsoka did want this to be a reality, but it was too late. As if reading her mind, the vision slowly vanished, fading to black, and she felt a part of herself go with it. Morai flew past her and she knew to follow. Ahsoka found herself in a desert-like area with the heat to match. However, oddly enough, there was grass and trees growing atop the sand. Looking up, she sees two suns beating down on the planet. More eyes circled her, urging her forward before starting to lead her again. As Ahsoka crests a sand dune, she sees what Morai is flying to. There are ruins of a crumbling temple nestled against a rock face. When she finally reaches it, Morai is perched above the entrance. Ahsoka hesitantly enters into the darkness and quickly realizes that the temple isn't built up against rock face, but inside it. It isn't long before the hallway opens into a grand chamber. Light pours in from a hole in the ceiling, and at the far end was an altar with a cloaked figure standing over it. Ahsoka couldn't discern what they were doing, so she approached them. As she got closer, she heard them speaking a language that she didn't understand. Though she couldn't understand it, it wasn't like they were reading something. It was like they were chanting. Ahsoka got close half the distance when the figure suddenly stopped what they were doing and spun around. Ahsoka gasped and staggered back. It was Palpatine. He sneered and raised his hands. He spit the words, "Whoever you are, be gone," as lightning flew from his hands. It hit Ahsoka before she could react, and she was thrown back, the pain making her scream. It was like she was thrown from her vision as she stumbled and fell, the impact from her head hitting the stone snapping her back to reality. Her breathing was fast and ragged, and her heart was racing. Once she calmed herself and regained as much of her bearings as she could in the dark cave, she gingerly tested her limbs and felt for injuries. She reached up to where the lightning had hit her, where pain still lingered, and found a hole burn through her shirt, though thankfully her skin felt smooth underneath. She would have to have life returned, but as the pain from the lightning faded, she didn't believe she was actually injured. It scared her though. She didn't know that you could be hurt from a vision, and though she didn't think she was, her shirt was burned, bearing proof of the lightning. Ahsoka dragged herself to her feet, and though she was still wobbly, she could walk, so she hastily made her way out of the cave. She found Anakin and Yoda where she had left them, and when Anakin looks up and sees her, he jumps to his feet and rushes to her, worry etched into his face. He asked what had happened, but Ahsoka just shook her head. She wasn't ready. She told him that they should go back to Yoda's hut, and if they wanted, share what they had seen there with Yoda. Yoda interrupted them, though, saying that their visions were for them and could only be interpreted by them, as he had done with his. Anakin nor Ahsoka argued with him, but one look at the other confirmed that they would share what they saw when they left. They made their way back to Yoda's hut, with Anakin helping Ahsoka until her legs stopped shaking. Once there, with nothing more Yoda could do for them, they thanked him and said their goodbyes. They boarded their ship and took off from the eerie planet, Ahsoka letting Anakin pilot while she changed her shirt. She was going to throw the burned shirt away, but on second thought, it would serve as a good reminder and proof of what had happened, however much it scared her. They quickly jumped away from Dagobah so as not to draw attention to it. When they get to a place where they shouldn't be bothered, Anakin powers off the ship. They sit across from each other, and Anakin tells Ahsoka what he had seen in the cave as well as what Qui-Gon had told him. His vision was straightforward, so they didn't really need to debate what it meant. It was a warning of the future and a way for him to start forgiving himself. Ahsoka took a moment to tell him what she had seen, but the overwhelming silence finally made her speak. The first part wasn't bad, though Anakin felt guilty that it wasn't reality. However, it would be a good memory for Ahsoka. Either way, her second vision was the one that shook her. She was holding the rune shirt in her hands as she told him, using it to work out her nervousness and anxiety. Anakin was perturbed by what she had witnessed, but had no insight. It worried him for Sidious to be doing anything with an altar, especially in an abandoned temple, but I didn't recognize neither the planet nor the temple. Though, what worried him most was that he was able to nearly hurt Ahsoka through her vision. Was it a Sith technique, or was Sidious just that powerful? And, if he was, did they even stand a chance against him? He couldn't think like that because if he didn't kill Sidious, then Sidious would get his children. He voiced his worry but also his resolve to Ahsoka, saying that she didn't have to confront Sidious with him if she didn't want to. But Ahsoka reassured him, saying that she had told him that she wouldn't leave him and would help him save the galaxy and his children. They rested and meditated there until they felt ready to return the rebellion. Once they reunited them, they would try to sneak onto Coruscant and confront Sidious. However, upon arriving on Yavin 4, they learned that the rebellion was way ahead of them. In time they were gone, Thrawn had reappeared and made his disallegiance to the Emperor known, which caused a portion of the Imperial forces that were loyal to Thrawn, or were just choosing what side they now believed to be the winning one, to break away from the Imperial military and join the rebellion. This caused small battles to break out all across the galaxy as Imperial fought Imperial, and whole fleets and garrisons suddenly disappearing, sending the Empire into turmoil and confusion. Thrawn was planning with Admiral Akbar an attack on Coruscant with a force made up of rebels and Imperial defectors. They would wrest control of the galactic capital from the Imperials and reinstate the Senate, hopefully having learned their lesson and ending the war more quickly. Anakin and Ahsoka immediately volunteer to join in, and they tell them of their mission to kill Sidious. However, while the forces gather, Anakin and Ahsoka go to Alderaan after seeing that a message had been waiting for them. When they get there, they indeed find Obi-Wan and Luke staying with the Organas. They had told the twins the truth, and Obi-Wan was teaching them about the Force. Though Bail Organa given the role of Alderaan sends her to Leia, he reassumed the role for the upcoming battle, both because of his experience and connections, but also because he didn't want to put his beloved daughter in danger. Anakin got to greet his children as a father for the first time, but it was awkward at first, though Leia was comfortable around Ahsoka both from seeing her often, but also from hearing about her from Bail. They didn't have enough time together though, as all too soon, Anakin and Ahsoka were leaving to meet up with Thrawn and Akbar in the combined fleets. When they reach the staging point, they find that the gathered fleet is indeed impressive, consisting of Imperial-class Star Destroyers that had massive rebel symbols painted on them, as well as Imperial cruisers, Mon Calamari cruisers, along with a swarm of other ships and freighters turned warships. It consisted of hundreds of ships, fighters, and bombers. They land in Thrawn's command ship, an Imperial Star Destroyer, as had hangar space and reported in. Within hours, they board their new respective X-Wings that had been acquired for them and take off before jumping with the rest of the fleet into hyperspace. As soon as they exited hyperspace, the massive battle commenced as hundreds of ships and fighters clashed. Anakin and Ahsoka were tasked with paving paths through the swarms of TIE fighters and causing confusion amidst the Imperial fleet, which they had great success at. They smashed through the fighters, causing maximum damage before targeting bridges or engines of the Imperial ships with their proton torpedoes, before swinging back around, rearming, and starting another run. They kept on doing this until Thrawn contacted them, telling them that the fleet was sufficiently weakened, and it was time for Phase 2. For this, Anakin and Ahsoka met up with Mandalorian Comrade-class fighter transports, and escorted them to the surface. Once there and disembarked, Anakin and Ahsoka jumped out of their X-Wings and had the astromechs go with the Comrades back to the fleet. They were the spirit of the force that were going to secure at least the top levels of Coruscant. They first fought and secured the Senate building, then the Executive building once the rebel forces came to guard the Senate building. When the rebels relieved them of the Executive building, they then went to the Imperial Palace, the former Jedi Temple. It was the hardest battle yet, but with the Mandalorians backing them, it wasn't too difficult to defeat the Stormtroopers and the Royal Guards. When they finally reached the throne room, Anakin sends the Mandalorian set up a perimeter while he and Ahsoka confront Sidious. No matter how strong he was, he wouldn't be able to survive this force. Once ready, Anakin smashes the doors off the hinges with the force, sending them flying inward. They took out several Imperial guards, but the rest charged them. Anakin and Ahsoka swiftly cut through them, watching each other's backs along the way. Once they are dealt with, they rush towards the throne, to the hooded figure that was sitting on it. However, at the base of the stairs, Anakin holds up his hand and tells Ahsoka to stop. Something is wrong. Sidious wasn't reacting. Anakin delved into the Force and felt the figure, feeling the Force signature, but there wasn't one. Cautiously, Anakin approached the figure and removed the hood. Underneath was a droid, and Anakin swiftly crushed its head with the Force. It had been watching them, recording them. Ahsoka, having precognition of something, quickly reached out with the Force and yanked Anakin away from the throne, just as the whole dais exploded. They both went flying, Anakin managing to catch himself, but Ahsoka still focused on Anakin, landing hard. Anakin rushed to her and helped her up. Thankfully, the worst of her were cuts and bruises, though Ahsoka was dazed from hitting her head. The Mandalorians rushed in, expecting a fight, but instead took in the destruction. Anakin told them what had happened. Anakin gets Ahsoka out of the temple in the smoke before joining the Mandalorians and searching the entire palace. However, after thoroughly combing it, they did not find Sidious. They get in contact with the other rebels to report this and get the good news that as the galactic capital fell, hundreds of worlds have sent word that they were willing to join the alliance to restore the public, and their senators are on the way to Coruscant. The war had taken a decisive turn and its conclusion was near. Anakin and Ahsoka left the rest of the battle and clean up to the other rebels, and instead sought out Thrawn. If anyone could find Sidious, it would be him. He was on board his Imperial Star Destroyer, and had already heard the news that Sidious likely was on Coruscant. They found him hunched over a galactic map, surveying it. They talked with him about where Sidious could have gone, though it was mostly Anakin and Thrawn, as Ahsoka knew little of the Sith or Sidious. However, while they debated, Ahsoka rubbed her sore muscles, and as her new wounds stinged, she remembered her vision in the cave. She quickly interrupted their conversation, reminding Anakin as well. He nodded, saying that it was the best possibility. Thrawn was confused, so Ahsoka briefly explained it. It didn't take long for him to understand what she was going for, and to her surprise, he told her that they would try it. She had suspected that he wouldn't trust or even believe in the Force, but he simply said that his people relied on it to find their way. This confused Ahsoka, but Thrawn refused to elaborate any further, so she dropped it. He pulled up a catalog of planets and had her describe the planets she saw. The desert with vegetation, 2 suns, and the ruins from a civilization narrowed it down drastically. Anakin also said that it should have something to do with the Sith, which left only a few planets. However, it would take too long for them to search them all. Thrawn asked Ahsoka if she would be able to feel if it was the right planet just by visiting it, to which she told him that she was unsure, but it was unlikely. Thrawn frowned before scanning over the list of planets again. He pulled up a planet, telling them that he would recommend starting with that one. Sidious had sent people to investigate it, but he didn't know the results. It was the only planet on the list that Thrawn knew had a direct connection to Sidious. This was good enough for Anakin and Ahsoka, and they asked where it was and what it was called. Thrawn looked up, telling them that it was in the outer rim of the Loris Baba system. The planet's name was Athos.